got me here in the Netherlands, Brandon. When all sorts of things to be said about the healthcare system here. I think overall, just fine. That's my review. I don't know if that's 3.5 stars, 4 stars, 4.5, depending on how you do the system. But I'm going to give it the just fine. Now, I think at some point, maybe a year or two ago, we did go over the software-defined talk fine scale. I don't
Hmm.
remember the exact. Maybe someone remembers it, but I think just fine was pretty much, yeah, that's real good. I think
Yeah,
I
that's
think
really
that's the
good.
equivalent
Yeah.
of just fine. And so like everything's cool. Don't need to worry about it. But the GP, the general practitioner you're assigned to, and I'm sure there's ways around this, just like anything. I'm sure people figure stuff out if they know what's going on, but it's sort of tied to your neighborhood, right? So
Okay.
I had a doctor
Oh,
when I
it's
was
assigned. Is that what it is? That how it works?
well, it's not assigned, but they
Okay.
like the practice you go to, they like you to live in the area,
Okay.
right? And so when I was over there in sorry to all my Netherlands listeners and friends, when I was over there in Watergraafsmeer, I went to a Watergraafsmeer place. That's where I think I mentioned him before, Dr. Skateboard,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
He was fine. Now they found out that I moved down here to Dalvendrecht some time ago, so I was called to refill a prescription, and it wouldn't work, of course. So I had to do the worst thing possible, Brandon. I picked up the phone or the iPhone and I called them.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
just calling
Oh.
people. I don't know when this happened, but calling people is maybe the worst thing that you can ever have to do. It's terrible. Now,
Yep.
and they were like, "Oh yeah, we dropped you because we they didn't say it this way, but you don't live here anymore, so we do that." Now the reasoning is they want to open up slots for people in the neighborhood to be. Side
I
note
see.
here,
Okay.
I think the Economist, they need to huddle. I don't know where they're going to go. Is it going to be Singapore, maybe Basel, or some German town I can't pronounce? But they need to have some counsel about this whole supply and demand theory. I've got two instances that I think disproves supply and demand. On the high end, we've got the situation I'm talking about, doctors. It seems like the demand for doctors is so high. Why is there so little supply? Right? Like how much more money do we have to pay doctors for there to be just like doctors falling out of the sky? Right?
Hmm.
Like now you could be all, I don't know if this is a Tyler Cowen libertarian thing. I don't know where the libertarians are nowadays in this Trump era. Hopefully they also are having a council and they're like, what the fuck did we do? And they're solving the situation or working on it. Maybe they're writing some papers. You get that Gwern guy, he can do some less wronging all over this thing. Whatever. But like, I feel like maybe it's, they would say it's regulations. That's
Uh-huh.
cool. Whatever. However, have you ever wanted to get something fixed around your house? Right? Maybe you want to have the outside of your house painted and
Hmm.
your neighbor is having the outside of their house painted. So you walk up and you're like, hey, you're painting the outside of my neighbor's house. And the person's like, oh, that's great. I'd be happy to paint your house. Looks like I could do this. I think it costs that much. Everything's going great. This is a very Brandon conversation. I've
Hmm.
heard you told me many tales about this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
You're like, sounds good. When can you come? And they're like, how about July? And you're like, oh, July, like 4 months. And they're like, no, 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 no. July, like 2026. And you're
Hmm.
like, cool talking to you. Now, this happens over and over again when you want what we would call a handyman, a
Hmm.
contractor to happen. And listen, as they say, I'm not. I think that it's difficult work, it's skilled work, all this kind of stuff. But like, I feel like painting the outside of a house. Yes, there's a lot going on there, but you're not like you're not down there at ASML like building microchip machines, right? Like
Right.
there's kind of like there should be a virtually unlimited supply of people who will paint the outside of your house, and yet there is not. So I
Hmm.
submit to you, supply and demand is fucked. Like someone needs to come up with a new law to do that. So I get off the phone with them and they're like, you got to go to, you got to find a new doctor. So we actually have a doctor down the street that everyone except me is enrolled in because it requires a phone call. You can rewind a little bit to see what I think about phone calls.
Hmm.
Terrible, right? So I call them up. Let me correct that. My wife and I have been together for a long time, over 20 years, maybe even 25 years, actually, probably around 25 years. she knows that I don't like calling people, so she is very charitable and she will call people for me.
Mm-hmm.
So she calls them. And this is one of those places that says, you're in a queue, as they say over here. You can stay on the line, and we estimate it will be, 10 minutes to 100 years to answer the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can leave your number and we'll call you back. And my question to you, Brandon, is this a trap? Or should my wife stay on the line to talk with someone? Or do you get the call back? What do you do? Like, what's the situation here?
Well, I think it's a great question, and actually, this topic really emerged in the Slacks from Andrew, and there was actually a relatively vigorous discussion about what do you have to do, and I hate to admit it, but like I'd like to have like thought through kind of rule, like almost like a rule book, like, well, if this, then do this, right? And it's like I am very inconsistent on this. Like it just depends on, like I can't even define exactly what my logic is. It's something about like
Mm, mm.
who I'm calling, right? The urgency of the thing, like either time or because I need something. My general mood, like where I'm calling from, like am I calling from my house where I'm kind of home alone and I can sit on hold, or am I doing something and I'm out and about? Um, and I have no like I don't know. So I guess I've done both. I do tend to though, if I'm given a choice, I will often just be like, I think I'm gonna wait. Especially if I and you can tell me if you
Mm,
think this logic is wrong. It's like I feel like if it's like a smaller kind of thing, a smaller office, that it's like where I don't think there's like necessarily a huge demand. Like I feel like, well, I'll just wait because I don't know. Those people may get busy and they may not call me back. Whereas if it's like I'm calling like a giant global conglomerate, right? I'm like, well, they probably have a system
Oh, yeah.
where
I like
the
that.
phone number gets logged and then it just like pops up and auto dials for them versus like, it's like it's kind of like if I think the system I'm talking to is like someone's gonna have to come check the voicemail, write down my number and call me back, then I'm more prone to wait. If I'm calling a large bank or any type of system that I like I said before, that I think has an automated system where they're just like, oh, we're gonna do it, like an airline, I
Mhm.
will often then wait for the call back. But I admit, like, this is very inconsistent. Like my logic, even as I say it out loud, I'm like, it's not rock solid. What do
I
you
think
do?
I think I think you got it. I think that I hadn't thought about it, but I agree with your system there. And to restate it and modify it a little bit, I think one, you have, let's call it urgency anxiousness, right? And
Mhm.
if you're depending on, whatever your urgency anxiousness is, if it's high, you just stay on the line, right? Because you're like, I don't want anything to screw up, right? I don't want to have to question it. I know if it what it's telling me is that staying on the line or having it call me back is the same time, that I'm going to stay on the line, because then I don't have to trust that it's being truthful about
Right.
calling me back, right? You eliminate that. So we'll eliminate we're building up a 2 by 2 matrix here of, dogs, cats, and Eisenhowers or whatever. And so
Right.
like if it's urgent, you just stay on the line. That's all you're doing. But if it's not urgent and it's for a big company, I think you have them call you back. Because
Yep.
I think that the thing that matters there is you have to trust that they have a system that, to the person handling the call, um, hides from them if you are waiting for a callback or waiting on hold. It's just like a call
Right.
just shows up,
Yep.
right? Because otherwise, maybe like the doctor office. I don't know if this is the case, but like otherwise, I'm imagining it kind of like batches it up for them, and at some point they have to decide to go do that. Or even if it's the case that like it just automatically rings something, I don't know, it seems shoddy. It seems like
Mhm.
there's a lot of room for error and interpretation there in the small systems.
But maybe what we're getting at is like there's almost like an implicit like IT adoption equation you're applying. And I'll give you two examples. Like I already mentioned the large company where you think like they have large IT systems, they're used to this, there's probably a queue and things like that. But then when you call like a local place, like I've done the same thing with a doctor's office where like the doctors have been operating mostly by phone calls, even like mail, like they'll mail you a bill, right? Or like they want checks and stuff like that. But then eventually they're like that group will either often probably be acquired by private equity, right? Or something like that. And then they'll be given like a medical information system, right? And they'll start to use it. And I have done this many times where I'm like, I of course like want, probably like you, like I want to use the online systems, but I found like sometimes like they don't like check the email or they don't know that
Oh,
it's there, right? So you kind of have to
yes.
be like, this group of people is used to a traditional phone call, mail based,
Uh-huh,
non
uh-huh.
IT automation, and automation is being forced upon them by a third party. And they're going to tell stories about like the way it used to be and how it used to be better, right?
Yeah.
Versus like the opposite in the case for the large companies where like they don't really have these traditional systems, right? They're like, you can only talk to them online or via
Yeah, yeah.
chat or an email. In fact, they would prefer like I want to send email, they want to they want to get, you know what I mean? Like that's what, because I think we're all on the same page. Like if I'm calling you, I don't think I have quite the aversion you do, but like if I'm calling you, it means I have exhausted every possible of online thing
Exactly.
that I know of. Like there was no chat, the email was unresponsive, I couldn't find it on your website. Like it is a last resort. Like I do not want to be on the phone with you either. Like I know this is painful for both of us. So I mean, I almost feel like you should have like some kind of queuing system where it's like no one wants to be on the phone call. Like those calls should go to the top, right? Like
It's an
because
emergency.
you're going to get through it quickly, right? Like I don't want to be there, you don't want to be there. I just need to get through this one thing, right?
Yeah,
And you can
yeah.
even tell me like this is where it was on the website, and I'll be like, "Yep, found it." Click. Like I don't want to do it. So I think there is like an IT automation kind of shall we say adoption maturity that we're kind of, if you will, judging from afar. It's like, are these people like into IT and automated systems, or they really prefer that you call? So that's another like weight on the
Yeah.
line kind of thing.
Yeah, that yeah, that is curious, and I think I like this like is the wrong word. There's a sentiment of like the way things used to be. You talk to people, get to know them better, and I think like I'd love to get to know you better just over text, right? We can have a great relationship over text. We don't have to talk with each other. I'd like to have an asynchronous friendship with you. Love it. Let's just do it that way. We can have a Norman Rockwell one text message at a time, all over the place, and this obliquely reminds me of another possible thing that might happen here: a changing of how you interact with people. Now, Brandon, it's been a long time since we had the web browser around. Netscape,
Mm-hmm.
you remember
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Mosaic.
Of
Then
course.
we had Internet Explorer,
Mm-hmm.
some other nonsense, and then there was Chrome. Now I use Safari,
There
which
was a
I
time,
think
there
is
was a moment where Firefox made a resurgence. I think
oh
in
yeah,
between
yeah,
that, Internet Explorer, Chrome, there was a moment Firefox was great. But go
yeah.
on,
Every now and then I see some developers using it, and I'm like, whoa,
retro.
good choice. you
It's a
know,
good third browser. Yeah, that's what you
yeah.
need. It's your third browser on your machine.
I bet you send your jams to dry cleaners too, that's a sharp look. Really, really, really crease there. So, and I was now we got another interface here, which I think I'm sold on this concept that, as I was joking, that people want to interact with the world through text
Hmm.
messaging, doing things, and that's kind of what you have with like all the robots with the Chat GPT, the Claudes. You're interacting with the world through typing, right? Through texting. Now, of course, you can open up a camera, point it at stuff. I went around my house a while ago when I got the access to the like live video thing, and I asked it for interior decorating advice. And the advice it gave wasn't fantastic, so it's a bit of a dancing bear. But what was fantastic is that it could actually see things and very quickly come up with advice for it. Right?
Right.
It was pretty amazing. And so I was just reading. It was this morning that there's this antitrust thing around Google. Looks like they got two antitrust things going on. The U.S. government finally woke up and was like, "Holy fuck, you own the advertising market for the world." And
Right.
like maybe this was like 5 years ago they did that, and they're going to solve that. But then I forget how this came about, but apparently like they're figuring out if they have to sell Chrome or not, which
Yeah,
which is
it's
just
one of the discussion points. Yes.
yeah. And I think several episodes ago we discussed that like that's a weird thing to be freaked out about. Doesn't really make money. Whatever. We could go all Ben Thompson and be like, well, actually, on a diamond-sided quadruple platform of aggregation theory, this, that, and the other. But like, it is a strange thing. But I saw that Chat GPT, the OpenAI people, they were like, we'll buy Chrome, which I think would be the perfect melding of like this new way of operating and the old way, just like the phone system, or going over to texting to an Epic medical record system. And I just think like I don't know if it's a good idea, but it would certainly be entertaining to see what they would do that with that. But I want to ask you, Brandon, what would OpenAI even do with Chrome? Is this just part of me thinks this is just the OpenAI people fucking with them. Just like, you kind of throw that out and they're like, "Ooh, let's see what happens here," because they could always back out, right? So it could always just be
Mhm.
like generating this fake stuff. But like, are they gonna do something with Chrome? Like, would they be bold enough to say like, "Oh, well, now we're gonna save all the data that all Chrome users use to train our models"? I mean, that seems like I don't know. What
Well, I
what do you
think you bring
reckon?
up some very good questions there. I think what's interesting about this whole thing is like I think when we initially heard about this, I certainly had this opinion. I think we all had the same opinion. It's like, well, this is like selling Chrome won't do anything, and it's like, okay, that's how I felt. But then you're like, OpenAI is like, we'll take it, and I'm like, you know what? I actually think if they got it, that would actually be quite a loss for Google because I do think, to your point, I think there's the we'll kind of go from maybe the most obvious, and then and we can talk about some other random ideas on top of it. But for sure, right? Immediately they get, the ability to, if you will, get people to sign up and use Chat GPT by default for what by however many billions of people are using Chrome. So that's just
This is a
like
good point, right?
that's
Right.
just day one. Day one, it's like, hey, we have access to all these people. And two, day two, and I guess one is also like, hey, instead of using Google, right? And in fact, instead of using a traditional search engine, why don't you just start using our chat-based
Right. They
information,
could just
right?
switch that over.
Yeah, and you can just be like, you don't. In fact, in the way that they can announce it would be something like, we don't do any advertising. At least at the moment, they don't, right? And I think, and then from their point of view, I think I think to kind of jump to the end, I think eventually they would decide that they would need to do advertising. I think that will be the ultimate. But in between that, they could say something like, well, right now we're just making it all free. We want you to use ChatGPT. We want you to subscribe, to our services, right? And they would sort of do something along the lines of like, we're going to gather all this data and figure out what else that we can do to provide you services, right? And I do think uh, it would be, I don't know if it will work, right? And if Matt Ray were here, I think he would be something a lot. He would be talking a lot about privacy and about how much they could invade your privacy, which is honestly, which is probably all true, which is 100% true. But at the same time, it's like, as we kind of know, people will trade privacy for some type of functionality, right? Whether it's like
Mhm.
access
Mhm.
to free movies or something along those lines. And with the recent announcement of ChatGPT having this new memory function, right? The idea that it'll remember all your conversations and about you, which I kind of like. Again, I know Matt Ray. I kind of think of him as sort of like the privacy angel on my side. Is like, that's wrong, but I like it. I like that it knows what I've been talking about. I like that it remembers stuff about me. And then when we're having the conversation, it kind of already has all this context that like
Yeah.
suddenly, this idea of like that was sort of like this half baked, they need to get rid of Chrome. Suddenly you think to yourself, like, Chrome with OpenAI is probably a pretty formidable competitor to Google. It definitely would certainly, make Google very nervous, which is maybe hasn't happened in like, I don't know, 20 plus years. So there is kind of a weird, like we're almost backing into, like we're vibe coding our way to an anti monopoly situation. And I don't know if it's really fair. I mean, I guess we'll let the lawyers figure that out. But like, I can definitely think like it's almost like sometimes like when you're playing a game, it's like, what would the opponent's fans not want me to do? And that's the decision you should do. You know what I mean? I think the same thing. It's like Google would be really upset if Chrome went to OpenAI, which probably means that like there's something to it. I don't know. What do you think?
I think maybe that's one of the underappreciated Sun Tzu settings is if my enemy sells their crossbow and I don't need it, I will buy it. And like that might be a good strategy. Now next item, I think I forget if I mentioned this, but I was talking with some people I don't know recently, and I was like, "Ooh, you don't want to be vibe strategizing. Like just like that's not a good like not a good place for vibing in
Right.
strategy work." And I think also other follow up. I think I check maybe multiple times a day to see if they've enabled that new memory thing in Europe, because that would be if it just knew about all the conversations I've had with it, the old Chatty G. That would be amazing. I spend so much time between D and D using it to write stuff,
Yeah.
just like passing context on from one chat window to the other. And what the fuck am I doing? Right? Like
Mhm.
it's ridiculous. Now, I think, from what you're saying, I think that maybe I have a new appreciation for Chrome, at least the potential of it. And I guess maybe it is kind of this. Like I'm kind of so far out of the Google world that I don't think about this stuff very much. The only reason I use Chrome is to record this episode and to log onto accounts
Restream, yes.
that I can't use otherwise. But I don't like this phrasing, but I want to use it to point to the point that I'm trying to make, because I don't like this phrasing, but it could be like the operating system of something, right? Like the common like substrate that brings users and everything else together. And I could see that like the Chat GPT people, amongst all the stuff you were saying too, they're like, all right, we've got this desktop app. And I think you and I and probably several many listeners, we've used this desktop app for a while, and you're like, you know, maybe you should pay the people who work on this, right? Like it's there's some features that only like you can't really even rename chat windows in the desktop app, if I remember. Maybe that's in Claude, I don't remember, but it's just sort of like, and I don't know, maybe it's because of security, but like there's so many interesting things you could do. Now, maybe this is the Sam Altman thing of like, we've just delivered groundbreaking intelligence and you're complaining about some feature we didn't launch 2 years ago when we promised it. I forget what
Yeah.
that feature was. But like I could see that Chrome is a much more in all, not only software wise, but community wise, it's like a much more built out community. You've got all the extensions, you've got all this stuff. It's probably very security hardened. I mean, there's issues still, but that's the internet for you. And so maybe it's just an overall better operating system, like a platform for if you want like an app, right? If you want that app connection, because you know, I guess I made it so you would get me wrong, but like their app is good and I enjoy using it, but like it could do so much more.
Yeah.
And maybe
No.
if you had that platform, and then the last thing I mean, I can see why this would be valuable is there is, even when I go every now and then I go to a Google site in Safari on my phone, and it pops up this thing of like, wouldn't you rather use Chrome? And I swear to God, half the time I tap on the wrong thing and I get launched into Chrome. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ,
It happened
what is
again.
happening here? And so even when I'm in Safari, I still end up in Chrome. So just imagine if I was in Chrome already, right? I would be there.
Well, what about this take? What about, because the thing about Chrome, right, is it's built by Google, and of course Google is at its heart an advertising business. And so if there was ever a chance to like move to like a subscription based way of doing this, right? Because like one of the things that there was talk about is OpenAI was in talks to buy Windsurf. That's like the coding tool, right? Kind of like Cursor, for like $3 billion, right? So it's like, there, I mean, who knows? These numbers are just crazy. But the idea, like to me, is sort of like, I guess to me, I was sort of like, I've been envisioning this idea of like an AI bundle. It's like, yeah, I'd like my AI coding assistant. So maybe I need to switch to Windsurf. I'd like a Chat GPT subscription, right? And I'd like, some better way to kind of edit text. There still isn't a good, like I want,
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
guess Chat GPT has the old what is that little window you open up? Canvas, right? But
yeah,
it's like I
yeah.
kind of want like Canvas, but I want it inside of Google Docs. And of course, you're like, well, why don't you use Gemini? But I try to use Gemini, but it doesn't really do this. You know what I mean? It's like it just
Mm.
puts me in another chat window on the side. It's like, no. So I just kind of think to myself, it's like if you can kind of bundle enough of this together, almost like an Office 365, but like kind of with the stuff that I want, like, well, maybe that would make sense. Maybe I would pay. I feel good about paying the $20 a month, being like, yeah, like to your point, like I'm getting a bunch of different things, right? I'm getting a web browser that like remembers all my conversations, that knows me. It makes me more efficient at doing my tasks. It gives me this nice way to vibe code some stuff. It
Yeah,
really does well and helps me draft my emails and my various documents in a natural way. I don't have to do all this cutting and pasting. Like I don't know, maybe you start to kind of think of it. You're almost like a Netflix of like, or subscription based thing is like, well, maybe everyone kind of gets used to paying $20 and we don't have to have, as Matt Ray would say, all this in shitification, ads. Like when I go like look up like I want to fly to Raleigh, right? Like I don't want to look through like 500 links of different travel offers. I just want someone to help me like book my flight. So maybe there is something in that. Now that's very, it would seem like humanity has shown that we don't want this. If given free with advertising and subscription, I believe humanity has opted for advertising every single time at some
Yeah,
point. So
yeah.
so maybe it's a naive statement, but like if there was a chance, maybe it looks something like this.
I like where you're going here, and one, I think we're doing a perfect example of vibe strategizing. It's very good. So I think we're full on it. Now number two, this can go two ways. One, you bring up this, I would like to have, AI when I'm editing text, and there's not a good solution for it. And I think that's true. There's a bunch of like, little third party applications trying going for it. There's one that I forget the name of it, something like elephantitis. That's not what
Right.
it's
And there's
called,
like
obviously.
Copilot from Microsoft. There, I don't want to say that people aren't trying. It's just none of them like
Right.
really
But
stick.
it's
Uh-huh.
nothing has gotten nailed quite yet. Right. Like, and it seems like the biggest market for AI is just modifying text in whatever app you have. So, and maybe this is the whole thing. It's just a privacy thing, like why Microsoft is trying to reintroduce that recall thing. Because in order to do it, you've got to be able to capture all the text on the screen, which is kind of scary. And then that's someone over at The Verge or something is going to write how you're trying to steal all their information or wherever this stuff is written. Now, that would be pretty cool. However, you're also making me think, I think we covered this a few episodes ago, or maybe this is just in my head, is I think there's a moment that you reach as a tech company where you're probably going to pursue a multi-year anti-pattern called Be Microsoft Office. And as far as I know, there's only been one company that's ever been successful at that, and that's Google. And it took them a long time and probably losing tons of money and having that cash cow of what another antitrust thing is going on, just making
Mhm.
shit tons of money in global
Yep.
advertising to be able to sustain that. Whereas, for example, I think most recently you looked at Zoom, which instead of following your advice and using its COVID high valuation for stock, went out, going out and buying a bunch of stuff. They What did they do, Brandon?
Nothing.
They tried to build Office.
Well, they tried about Office. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
True. True. And yeah, Zoom chat and all that.
And so like, there should be alarm bells where you're like, hold on, is what you're saying that we're going to build a new Office?
Mhm.
No. Let's end this meeting, go get lunch, come back
That's
tomorrow.
right. Yeah, so
And
maybe we do. Maybe we just go back to your thing, back to like tried and true. It's like, hey, OpenAI could just get Chrome and use it as a way to bootstrap building an advertising based business going forward. You know what I'm saying? And over time, they would
yeah,
just have to figure out what is the optimal ad unit to put inside of ChatGPT. And to keep us all there, they would give us free stuff like a coding assistant, like, better integration for writing prompts, but all of it would be in service of like, where we want to keep them in, just like Google, right? Think about Gmail and Google's Google Sheets and all their stuff. It's like, well, it's really just keep you in the Google ecosystem so that later on when you search for that flight, you can get the 500 travel links in favor of it. So that does, to your point, like this is a little channeling a little Ben Thompson here. It's like Sam Altman probably wants to try the subscription thing because everyone wants to try to do the subscription thing, but in the end they will all discover that we just need to figure out the ads. And going back to Google, that was the whole like do no evil, right? At the very beginning, like, we don't want to do ads or advertising, or Facebook, the same thing. But in the end, everyone learns that like to make tons of money, you need to create a really good ad unit. So maybe we're just on the path to that. Now there is, though, I will say before everyone says bad, but there's usually a pretty good runway, though. It's like before you get to the point that everything's enchetified, there's usually a nice runway of like 10 years where the products are pretty good. You know what I mean? We're like, Google early, like the ads were fine. They were just like two links at the top. They barely even got in your way,
yeah.
right? So it's like that was fine. That period was great. Now it's gotten to the point that's crazy. So think of it that way. It's like under our new ad providers, we probably get 10 years of like really simple ads that are just to the side. And then in 10 years, we're just like, oh, look at this crazy. I can't even talk to the LLM. In fact, it knows so much about me that as soon as I type in something, it's trying to have a different conversation. It's interrupting me talking about like, buying things I don't need from Amazon. And I'd be like, well, it's gone too far.
Oh, that would be, I mean, yeah, that would be bad. The thing about enshittification is that like, at some point shit used to be a great steak on your plate. right? It was something that was good at some point, and eventually it passes through and it becomes enshittified. And I don't know the full orthodoxy stuff, and woe to anyone who says anything wrong about Saint Cory Doctorow or whatever, because they'll get a long missive of just raw links, not even put into HTML, sent out by some Usenet mail list thing. But
That's right.
there is sort of like, maybe I should go reread the Gospels of Enshittification, but I feel like there's some trade-off where it's like, well, you didn't want to pay for it for 5 years, and now you're going to pay for it for 10, right? And there's also a moralistic thing where like someone decides to enshittify something just because they want to make money. And I did make fun of our libertarian friends for fucking everything up, but it's sort of like, well, yes, right? Like that's sort of like that's how these things work. But I think maybe the other issue is like the middle ground is like something like, it would be interesting to run YouTube Premium through an enshittification test. Like, if you pay for YouTube, if you have YouTube Premium, has it been enshittified? And I mean, yes and no. Yeah, it's a gray area, right? Because you don't see all the shitty ads. And I don't know. It like my YouTube experience is pretty good, right? Like it's good to the point where like I kind of blame myself when it's bad, because I'll be like, yeah, I mean, I know. I watched 3 videos of a guy
Right. You watched
taking.
a bad video, right? That kind
Yeah,
of thing.
I
Not,
watched 3
yeah.
videos of someone, like, sharpening a knife, but, like, now I'm seeing 50 videos of someone sharpening a knife. Whereas, like, instead, if I go like, I reinstalled Instagram on my phone the other day, and, like, after 20 minutes, I was like, "Whoa, I know why I deleted this." Like, I'm either seeing, like, a bunch of AI generated stuff of, like, barnacles being scraped off of whales, or just boobs. Like that's all I get, right?
That's all
And
I
and
get.
like I don't get that in YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Like I get people sharpening knives and videos about model context protocol. And so like I don't know. I think there's another angle to this Chrome thing. And this is one of those like vibe strategy things that's a little too optimistic to be real, but when you got those crazy Silicon Valley people, maybe they think about this a little bit, is there probably is a little a significant amount of industry standards control that you get if you own Chrome. So there probably is like an influence of how the web works and kind of driving it in a direction that you want over the past 20 years for other reasons as well. But because Google owns Chrome, that they get to kind of like drive the way that a lot of that
Right. They're
stuff
kind of, well,
works.
they are the de facto, enforcers of like HTML standards and HTTP. It's like, because like everyone uses Chrome to test. So it doesn't matter really what the spec says. It's just like, what does Chrome do?
Right.
Right. And
And
as
so
you
I
both know, as Safari users, you're like, sometimes you're like, oh, this doesn't work that well in Safari. And that's basically why.
and so maybe, as I've gotten into more of this modern day programming, I've discovered that like JSON has just taken over the programming world. It's just everywhere.
Who
And
knew?
and and it's clearly, I mean, the people seem to like it. These
Yeah.
kids these days. It seems like the dumbest fucking thing I've ever encountered in the programming world. And let me tell you 2
Wow.
reasons.
Wow. This is a hot take. We're going to get some email on this. Go ahead.
One, who quotes variable names and method names? You only quote things that are not part of the program, right? So you look at a JSON structure and it's got double quotes everywhere. Also, double
Mhm.
quotes, very problem. Are you going to get smart quotes? Even if you did smart quotes, would you have a closing smart quote where you want an opening one? Like you're into a world of mess right there. But then, like, if I define a variable or an infinitely long structure, the name of that structure is in double quotes, which is to say it's the value of a variable, which makes completely no sense, right? That's just like, that's a variable. The value is in quotes. Everything else is not, right? Like you don't put stuff around quotes. 2, it doesn't even have comments. I rest my case, right? Like how this has become like such an important undergirding thing of, I mean, I feel like at this point, if JSON disappeared in 30 seconds, the world would collapse and there would be cats and dogs living together. And this has become a vital piece of infrastructure that you can't even add comments to, that adds quotes around the programmatic structures of the whole thing. And it's just absurd. I mean, there was probably some reason they were like, oh, it works perfectly well in JavaScript and blah, blah, blah. and then it just like went out of control, and it's not good. I hope someone's working on that problem. I haven't done my research, but that's my thoughts on JSON.
A new JSON, a new format. That's that what we need?
And so maybe now this could be, maybe this is a new Cory Doctorow piece. If you let the OpenAI kids buy Chrome, it's going to be JSON for 100 years, right? Like it's going to be the 1,000-year protocol standard that quotes, your programmatic things. Not good. But obviously, you can get some support for driving like standards and things like that with Chrome.
What about this though? What about this as the Chrome extension? I know you've done a lot with model context protocols, MCPs. It's like, one of the frustrating things is like you have to kind of set up all the various MCP servers, right, and run some Docker container and things like that. Is this a way of future that this like Chrome, if you will, being bought by OpenAI, they could just do all this for us? Like, yeah, configure all this MCP stuff for me. Like, I don't want to have to I just want it to work. I don't want to have to do all of that stuff. Do you think is that possible, or is that making this browser too big at that point? They're just like, this is just a bloated mess.
I think you could definitely do add that into the browser. And that's the kind of thing where like, I think having a browser would be, there's a lot that you could do there, right? So having used like MCP stuff in Claude for a little over a month now, right? Like when it works even halfway well, it's pretty awesome, right? And there's only in the model context protocol world, there's only one thing that works halfway decent in Claude, and that's a tool, which is just like, calls out up to a method and returns something. And the reason that it works well is because, as always, it's your favorite, Brandon, security is just fucking up user experience everywhere.
Yep, of
right?
course.
Like,
yeah.
Like it works well because it only asks you once if it can call out to your method, and then it just keeps calling it, right? Whereas all of the other whether you're doing a resource or, as I did today, a prompt, there's other things, but those are the two main ones. Like you have to manually do it each time instead of it automatically doing it, right? And so that is the good point you're raising, that in the decades we've had of web browsers, they've kind of figured out and trained humanity about the expected workflows for inputs and outputs of systems, right? And so it would be a good foundation for like getting those plugins working. And in fact, this could be a terrible security thing, but when it comes to Chrome, you add an extension and you basically just click yes once, and then it works forever.
And it continues to work, right? So maybe you could do
Which
something along the
could
lines.
be terrible.
Yeah.
but at least it's usable, right?
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Oh yeah, so it could be like I could see that you could do all those things like that. That's I give these people, I don't know shit about their desktop apps, but like on the other hand, you could also see that in like with the Claude desktop app, they could just add those features too, right? Like they could equally like evolve their app to do this stuff, but they would also be like blazing new trails of how things work.
Well, it's the user base, right? With Chrome, it's sort of like you instantly get, like, I guess that's maybe the thing we kind of underestimate. It's like, hey, having access to like however many billions of people use Chrome every day, even if you kept it, we're talking about much more complicated things, but even if you were just able to switch the default box, the kind of the search bar, and it went to ChatGPT, like that's probably worth billions of dollars to ChatGPT.
And
it's just sort of like you become like, it does kind of feel like, and we've had so many conversations about OpenAI and others. It's like, I do at this point kind of feel like, love it, hate it, ChatGPT is kind of the consumer brand. Like I find myself, I return to it. Like I know I try the other ones, but I kind of always fall back to it. And I just think like, the human mind, like we can only remember so many things. And it's like, if anything's going to be $1 trillion company here, ChatGPT has that consumer kind of flow going.
I think you're right. I think the anecdote to vibe strategizing is, I'm going to call it Occam's vibe, which is just like find the simplest thing, and that's what you should be doing instead. And I think in this instance, as you're getting to, the simplest thing is like you buy Chrome, and then you wait 6-12 months for the government to forget that you exist. And then all of a sudden, the new version of Chrome, it asks you, would you like to use Google search or ChatGPT search?
Mhm.
and then that's it. You're out. And
Yeah.
and then they just search over to using the new Chat GPT search, and there's your investment.
Yeah.
Plenty
No,
of
so I
money.
think it really will be interesting. Now, I think most well, I should say most, but like many legal scholars say like all of this Google antitrust stuff will of course be appealed. And there's always a chance that in the end, much like the Microsoft thing, I guess in the end, Microsoft sort of lost, but like, did they really lose anything? So it's like it feels like like as I guess all antitrust cases, I was thinking to myself, it's like when they go to trial and there's like almost a verdict, everything's already moot. And I feels like that's going to happen here. Like in 5 years, like something will have happened on this whole LLM thing, right? It'll either have replaced search as we know it, or it will have faded. But like it won't be like, the fact that Google has to do something around search, it won't even matter anymore because we've all, adopted something new. So, so I guess that's just like maybe that's just a statement of like things really don't change, or the market, if you will, to channel your libertarian friends. Like in the end, the market sort of takes care of itself. It's not really a government legislation that makes these changes. So it'll be
Well,
fun to watch.
well, I want to go on about it. I want to ask you your take on the antitrust thing here, and I think this question started to creep up on us like 4 or so years ago, and I think I read this passage in CNBC. I forget the name of the reporter or reporter's coverage of the Google thing, and let me read it to you. As listeners know, I don't like to read stuff here very often, but I think it's pretty good stuff. It says Meta Platforms is on trial in a separate antitrust case brought by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, accusing the owner of Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram of holding an illegal monopoly in personal social networks. The FTC has also accused Amazon of unlawfully dominating retail markets. The DOJ has also sued Apple, claiming it holds a smartphone monopoly. Now, I read over that, and I had two thoughts, Brandon, and this is what I want to get your thought on. One is like, I don't think any of that is wrong, right? Like it seems like the dominance that these three companies plus Google have in their respective markets, like, is unquestionable. Maybe that's why they're worth so much money, right? And
Yeah.
but then on the other hand, like it is true in the old days when we were kids that if you don't like what's on TV, you can just change the channel, right? Like that's the thing about the web is it's always, aside from Chrome asking you when you're in Safari if you would like to use Chrome. I don't know what's going on with that. That like it's true you can always type something else in the address bar if you know how to do that. So like obvious, well maybe not only obviously, but there's obviously tactics. What do they call them? Dark patterns, Brandon. That
Mhm.
once you get someone in there, you kind of keep them in there. But there's a large part of the success of these companies that's based on, well, their shit is really good, right? And it may be really good in an unhealthy way, like, Ritz crackers are really good, and
Mhm.
so they're successful, or Lucky Charms are really good. Uh, but like in some category, they're doing a great job. They're doing really well. And so, like, what do we do with that, Brandon? Do we have the take that like you can make a really good product, but you can't be $1 trillion company? Is that the situation? Or are there actual, they don't have a good product? Or like, how do we reconcile this kind of stuff?
I think in the end, unfortunately, when it comes down to it, it's sort of like you can. I mean, this is just like classic, like legal statement here. It's like you can have a monopoly. It's just like what do you do with it? Like how do you prevent people from doing things? So it's like I think where
Mm,
these kind of end up, they just kind of end up in like big fines and things that are sort of like if you will, annoying to the company, but they don't fundamentally change anything, right? So I think that's where we kind of end up. So because like you're kind of saying, it's sort of like we're kind of getting what we want, right? And so there's just sort of like, well, how far do these companies exploit that? So like, like the Google case around the ads is just like, well, the problem is like they basically bundle this together so that like there really can't be any other ad network existing, right? Like you have to always use the Google ad network. And so you can kind of say it's like, okay, find them, change that behavior, but like we still want Google. You know what I mean? I think maybe that's in the end. Or the same thing with Amazon. It's like, okay, maybe Amazon's doing the wrong thing, but we still really like free shipping and we still want to get our stuff from
right,
Amazon.
right,
So
right.
so I think it's like, fundamental change, I guess I would say this fundamental change probably only comes from like new companies disrupting the market, maybe like OpenAI and ChatGPT are trying to do in search. And that's the only way to really disrupt and change behavior. But barring that, it's sort of like you're just trying to keep these companies in check and be like, hey, listen, you've gone too far. We're going to find you, or you can't do that. And like, you got to keep this more open. But we're not going to, if you will, fundamentally dismantle you as a company. I guess, the last time in our lifetimes, really Bell would be the company people point to, like actually breaking up
Mm.
those companies and creating, various long distance providers. I mean, that's like a dated statement. So I don't know,
Which
like, does
which was
anybody?
actually pretty great. Like in retrospect, it seems. Although I guess you could have a counterfactual. You could be like, I don't know, they could have stayed in business and 5G would be around and everything would be just as
Right. I
cheap,
think
if not
that's the
better.
whole thing. Like you could have like, I heard someone, I think this is another thing I heard Ben Thompson on one of his podcasts talking about, like, well, I mean, one of the listeners wrote in and was like, well, we had Bell Labs, and Bell Labs like invented, like when you look at the things Bell Labs invented, it's like everything. It's like, oh, like
Yeah, yeah.
Unix and transit. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it's like, well, like we had this awesome thing that was just pumping out innovation, and we kind of gave that up for free long distance or better rates on long distance. Of course, that's oversimplification. So I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see what it happens. But in the end, it does feel like it's kind of what you're getting at, like new companies that convince users they have a better way of doing something is really the only way these things change. You know what I mean? It isn't like I just like, intervening in a way. It's like why I understand why people want it done at times. It's like, it's almost like, great, you've identified a problem, there isn't really a good solution to it, So it's like we just kind of have to live to the next iteration. It's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Microsoft is or was a monopoly with Windows in like the late 90s, but like the world moved on to smartphones. It doesn't really matter anymore. And eventually, like the world will move on from iPhones. I love my iPhone, right? But like it'll move on. There'll be something new. And we'll just be like, oh, remember Apple? They're a lot smaller now because iPhones aren't as important or whatever. Pick any one of these companies. It just happens.
And I got, as the ultimate ironic thing is that a lot of the times the competition being acquired would gladly be acquired, right? Like I'm if you remember, like, Adobe tried to buy Figma, and I think that fell through full of for antitrust stuff, and I'm sure the Figma people were like, "Fuck,"
They were
right?
sad.
And
Well, they lost a
and
lot of
and
money, right? I mean, they had all that
yeah,
money.
yeah, and
So
and so and so, like, while you're trying to support competition, the ones that want to get bought, like, would like to get bought. But yeah, it is. I'm not sure. And as a case in favor of that, someone that it seems I'm no lawyer, but it does seem like in the U.S. tax filing thing, Intuit, or they're not that they basically have a pretty good stranglehold on filing taxes, right? And even if they don't, I don't know how much of the market they command. I don't know if you would analyze the market by people who pay for software to do their taxes, or if your TAM is all people who file their taxes because you're competing with getting paper and doing it, et cetera, and so forth. But I don't. It seems like we had a free filing thing last year, which for various reasons was killed, and so it seems like here we are again with TurboTax as, like, a way of doing taxes. And I don't think there's that many TurboTax competitors out there. Like, there's something weird going on with the situation that they have.
yeah, well, there are. I mean, there are obviously a bunch of other services, but like it is just one of these things. Like, we talk about so much about like app modernization and things like that. And I think we've had this conversation many times on the podcast. It just seems like the one place that the government can often make a huge difference is just automating tasks that literally millions of people have to do, whether it be getting passports or getting a driver's license or all the things we've talked about, like making that process very simple. If you think about how much time and effort is saved because so many millions of people are doing this, that any type of automation at that scale it's got to be a tremendous savings of time and effort. And it just feels like, man, taxes are like just the most obvious one, right? Like, as we've talked about 1,000 times, the system has all the information of the income of like what you made, right? And it has all the answers. It could just send you the answers. And of course, you could still appeal. You could still do your taxes the old way. You could still get an accountant, but it's sort of like, for all the people, like my son got his first job, right? And he got his first paycheck. It's like, it's not going to be very complicated. He's not going to make much money, and you could just send him anything and they'd be like, oh, I had to pay this amount of money, Dad. I'm like, yep, that's how it goes. And so it is one of those things. And to your point about monopolies, it's like, man, I wish we could turn our attention to these monopolies and just be like, hey, we're just going to have a simple government system that people can use. if they want, and it just seems like the cost savings would be off the chart. So it was. I would say in the world of IT modernization projects, I'm very sad to see this one die off, and hopefully it'll return again, maybe in 4 years, maybe in 8 years. But like
Yeah.
it can be done. It could be
Yeah.
done.
I don't think, I mean, amongst the flurry of all the other like batshit crazy stuff going on all the time, I don't think I've seen like a write-up of why it was canceled. I mean, other than the probably accurate conspiracy theories that, led by a group of people who like to call themselves big balls, things like that you would get around to. But it
Well, I think
does
this one
seem,
is fairly simple. I think this is a fairly simple thing. Obviously, Intuit and TurboTax, like they, traditional lobby, right? They spent millions of dollars lobbying against this for many years, and ultimately, they won the day, right? They convinced the necessary politicians that that it is what it is. So
I
again,
guess
it's
I
just
guess
like
so.
it just feels like an easy win, right? It just feels
Yeah,
like
yeah.
why I understand why Intuit doesn't want it. Obviously, it's a systemic. I mean, it's back to our thing. What you said, what you had the what is it? The quote about it, right? But again, just back to like, do what your enemies don't want you to do. It's like, wait a minute, Intuit is really against free filing. It's like maybe we should build a free filing. You know what I mean? It's like it seems like they think it could be really successful. A really successful. I mean, it's almost like an endorsement of a government program. It's like they're so worried about this that it's going to be really good. Like maybe we should just do it. But no, sadly, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What are you gonna do? People got all freaked out when TikTok was like offline for 6 hours and shut down the free tax filing thing. No one seems to care. So it goes. Well, speaking of things that it seems like people don't care about, but that they actually care a great deal about. Do we have any bureaucracy this episode, Brandon?
Well, we did. We a couple things. So out of the Software Defined Talk Slack, which you can of course join by going to softwaredefinedtalk.com and click on the Slack button and register and get in there. Warren, we had this long discussion about Git, Cote, right? So Warren recommends Fossil as an alternative to Git. That is actually written by the creator of SQLite. So there was actually a pretty passionate thread about if you will, software configuration management, how to do it. And so if you're looking for another alternative, it sounds like I have not tried it, but Warren and a few other people really like Fossil. But there was also a contingent of people that said, like, really, Git's not hard. You just have to learn the few happy paths and you can just live with it, which I also kind of understand that as well. I think it's just in the end, it's just maybe it's just the words. It's like maybe if it wasn't a pull request, maybe if it was just a merge request or something along those lines, maybe I'd
Yeah,
be on the
yeah.
side of Git. But it is what it is. So anyway, check that out. Check out Fossil. I look forward. We've already gotten some nice comments about JSON and YAML. I feel like we'll be getting some listener feedback on that. I'm interested to see what people think. I don't have, for the record, I'm going to put that one on Cote. I don't have a strong opinion yet, but like I look forward to the opinions that will be coming in. Also, did an interview last week with Rick Houlihan from Mongo. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. One thing I just thought, Coach, I want to get your take on is like he kind of talked about DevRel, and one of the things he mentioned about it that I don't think we talk about enough about. Specifically, he said that like, hey, that they had done at least this time at Amazon and other places. They had done a bunch of like labs, like showing people how to use like unstructured data and things like MongoDB and others. And so he said that like in the end, the labs just like weren't really cutting it. Like people didn't really take that knowledge back with them. And he found that like sending the DevRel people out to just with the customers to work on their data and their specific problems was the thing that was much more effective. And so it sort of kind of edges up to like professional services and stuff. But like I think in this time, in this economy, it's like I just thought to myself, like, one, that's not as exciting as like going to a conference and giving a speech or doing something on social media. But like sort of like having the skills to like walk in and just make the customer successful is like, I don't know, it's like an obvious but important thing that probably doesn't get talked about enough in DevRel. And you can maybe even argue it's like, well, is that professional services or is that something else? But like, I just kind of took that to think to myself, it's like, yeah, that's probably the best skill that anyone should have. And then you can just kind of invent the job title that you want to go along with it. So I don't know. What do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think of like,
I think
doing that?
there's two phases of that before you just become a full on like sales engineer or whatever. Like something we do a lot is we actually spend a lot of our time going on site or virtual, talking one to one with customers and prospects, and just like doing a half day, day long workshop with them, walking through things. And really, you go in with like, you have prepared content in case no one has questions. But about halfway through, people just start asking you questions and you start kind of like solving problems that they have. You don't really like in this situation, like code with them and do things. You're more just like planning stuff out. And I've seen that be successful over and over again. And the efficiency and DevRel of it is for enterprise customers, they all have the same problems at the same time, all at once, whatever that movie was. And so, like, you kind of like can anticipate what they're saying and find out their details, and you have a similar solution. Because that's another secret of DevRel that the DevRel people don't want to tell you is they pretty much say the same exact thing every day, just to like different people, right? And so, like, you get whenever you see a really good DevRel presentation, that's because that person has done it so many times, right? Like they're not just, it's like a stand up routine. Like they're not just making it up for the first time every time you see a stand up routine. So that means that you can go to all these places on site and you can genuinely help them with their problems. Now, as far as like sitting with them and working over multiple days to actually like work on code that gets committed, like you could kind of sort of do that, but that starts to get more towards like I think Palantir calls that a forward deployed engineer, right?
Mhm.
Where you've actually got someone working with you and they might even commit code back to there. And I don't know, that could happen. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely having your DevRel people like be on site, working with people, having that kind of sales engineering kind of interaction for like a day, maybe 2 days. Yeah, I think that's really valuable. It's good
We should
stuff.
check it out. Check out the interview. You can get Rick's take on it if you want to hear more about that. But I thought that was good. I thought that was an interesting comment, something I hadn't thought about as much.
Well, there's some conferences coming about where you can hear about all sorts of things much and probably see some DevRel people. Maybe you could ask them to figure out why your JSON is not working, or figure out what alternatives are, compile some code, work on some modernization. Now we already did this because April 16th has passed, but you can see the recording of our Town Zoo annual update. It's I think it's maybe like a 25-30 minute thing. I MC it. I do a little roundtable interview, no table, kind of standing on a stool. I do a standing on a stool interview, sitting on a standing stool. What do you call
Mhm.
that? The stool that you can't really sit on. You know that it's tall. There
Yeah,
must
I don't
be a
know, like a countertop stool, something like
yeah.
a
There you
bar
go.
stool. Yeah.
I do a bar stool interview. There
Mhm.
it is.
Yeah.
With a couple of my coworkers. You see some demos. It's good stuff. You should check that out. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/516, you can find a link to that. There's also DevOps Days Atlanta coming up. That's right soon here, April 29th to 30th. There's KC Day. That's what does that stand for? Kubernetes Community Day.
That's
Is
right.
that
In Texas
Kubernetes?
here. Yeah, down here in
Yeah,
Austin, Texas.
that's going to be Austin, Texas, May 15th. Our friend, my co-host on Software Defined Interviews, Whitney, will be there. Lots of Austin people. You should go check that out. Cloud Foundry Day is coming up May 14th in Palo Alto, California. I always think if I say Palo, well, this is you're asking you as the wrong person. But if you were to ask like an American outside of tech and you say you're going to Palo Alto, would they know that was what that was? Do you think, Brandon?
Probably because of Stanford, they would know. There's a chance they'd be like, oh, like you know where Stanford is? Yeah, something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, I always feel the need to put California after it when I tell people outside the tech world because I
Yeah,
don't know,
that's fair.
you know, you know. Have you ever encountered someone who was supposed to fly to SJC, the San Jose airport, but they ended up in Puerto Rico or wherever
No, I
because
have not. I've
maybe
not
it's
heard
somewhere in
that. Right.
Mexico, but I
There
I
is a
remember
place
encountering
along
someone.
those lines. I've heard there's a couple of things, but I've heard there's mostly urban legends. People really don't do that. Maybe like when
Mm,
they
I don't
don't
know.
have a passport or that someone calls them up. Now I know people that have flown like they're like, oh, I'm going to San Francisco, and they end up in San Jose or vice versa, and then they have like the long
Oh
override.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that I've
That
heard many times. Like, oh yeah, they thought it was all like close together, and it's like, yeah, not really. It's not really
no.
close. So
Yeah, that's true. So if you want to go to Cloud Foundry Day, US on May 14th, where I'll be speaking, we also have a workshop before going over our AI stuff. There you go.
mhm.
DevReli workshop stuff. I think I'm going to be presenting there on all of the D&D model context protocol stuff I've been doing. And there'll be some real presentations after that. But you're going to want to go to Palo Alto, California. Not this mythical Bermuda Triangle, Palo Alto. that people end up going to. And like I mentioned, there's also a free AI workshop we're doing May 7th, May 13th, the day before that. And also, finally, I'll be in Oslo May 21st to 23rd. Gonna have a busy May there for NDC. Good little developer conference. Nice place. There's a fun little grocery store and excellent parking right
Well,
next
what's
to the conference
NDC?
center.
Of all the things not to like to spell out, what is that?
It's got to be something. I have no idea actually.
I was gonna
New
say with that one, we probably should
new
actually look at
new
what it is.
dimensions coding. Do you remember
I
when
don't.
everything was named Dimension or
Yeah,
Dimension
that was like
something?
it feels like very like late '90s. So
Yeah, that was fun. I
yeah,
like that.
NDC Oslo. You have to tell us. You have to take some pictures of Oslo for us all. So good time
Well,
to go though.
if
It's gonna be the summertime, so or at least warmer.
oh
So
yeah, it will be nice. Well, if the only problem with going to Oslo, Brandon, is as you
hmm
know, I'm a Marriott man, and I
hmm
think I've mentioned this every year, every
uh
time I go to
oh
Oslo.
poor Cote.
There's one Marriott, I think that just might be that's affordable, but there's basically one Marriott that I can go to in Oslo. It's not even Oslo. Not only is there one that's outside of Oslo, but it's a Moxie,
Mhm.
and I not
Well,
good.
Coach, I think it would be okay to not stay at a Marriott like once in a while. And also, just so everyone knows, I've looked it up. It's Norwegian Developers Conference.
Oh,
That's
there you go.
NDC, which would make sense. That would now that I see it, it makes sense.
I
So,
feel like they have
uh,
NDCs in other cities, but maybe it's spread. Now, also, I want to mention there's all sorts of pylon stuff there. Speaking of Marriott's, I recently achieved lifetime platinum status, so maybe I can
well,
stay.
that back to your previous comment, that means it's immediately time to switch to the Hilton brand and start to climb the ladder. That I mean,
Ah,
that once you've achieved one, you need to
yeah,
immediately go get the next one.
just 10 years from now, I'll be
You
Hilton
might as well start. It's like planting a tree.
Rufflebees.
The best time to start was 10 years ago, if not now. If
That,
second best right now. So I look
that's
forward
true.
to your life as a Hilton person.
Well, that was a great recommendation. Do you have another recommendation for us, Brandon?
I do. I'm just going to recommend Dope Thief on Apple TV. It sounds like I just watch, all I do is watch Apple TV. I guess I want to keep it going. So I'm the one person trying to watch all the shows. But Dope Thief is kind of a slow start, but it's basically about these guys that steal a bunch of stuff and then lots of craziness happens. But like it's been surprisingly good. It's gotten more interesting than maybe I initially thought. So if you're looking for something to watch, check out Dope Thief on Apple TV.
Well, first of all, I want to recommend part 4 in my series of doing model context protocol programming. I did one today, I think I mentioned, uh, probably several times because I'm shamelessly self promoting all the time, where I figured out there's this construct called a prompt, which kind of sort of doesn't make that much sense when you read the docs. But I figured out a cool way to use a prompt to basically have it build an adventure for you. And if you've been reading about all this agentic AI stuff, you can see kind of happening before your very eyes. It's in the video, but if you program it yourself, you can see an agentic flow happening where I think there's one, correct me where I'm wrong or endorse me where I'm right here, Brandon.
Mhm.
One of the definitions of agentic workflow is that the AI has autonomy to make decisions about how it's going to solve a problem and reason with it, often involving chaining together a series of things that it's doing on its own. And with this way of using a prompt, you can see that happening. It uses multiple tools, decides kind of sort of how to orchestrate it, and then reasons out something at the end, creating the adventure for you. And it's pretty exciting to watch. It's a good time. And if you haven't seen the other 3 episodes that videos that I have, which I know most of you listening have not because I have the numbers, you should go check them out.
You have work to do. Uh-huh.
Especially the third one, where there are multiple Easter eggs spread throughout the third one. And if you enjoyed the JSON rant, there's more of that in there. In fact, it was my first run at talking about JSON stuff there. And you can see where I was editing, I found an error in what I was saying, and I correct myself. So if you didn't like the JSON rant, you can see me making fun of myself and getting fresh breath at the same time. Third
Nice.
episode, I think there. But my other recommendation, I don't think I've recommended this, but you know how it goes, Brandon and listeners. Sometimes you see some deal or something you can purchase, and you think, one, that's something I would be interested in, even though I've proven to myself over the years I don't actually use that stuff. But at the very least, it'll be fun to purchase it. And that's how I ended up with a Field Notes subscription. And what that means is every 3
But of
months.
course, this is an incredible. You and John Dickerson, I love it. Go on, please continue.
So every 3 months they send you some special sort of Field Notes package. I got I got there's this Chicago themed notebooks that they made. You get 3 of them. You got a
For
pen.
those listening in audio, I'll make sure to include a picture of this in the cover art so you can see Kote's fancy new
Now
notebook. Go ahead.
now this one is inspired by sign makers in Chicago. It has diagrams of things they would use. It's good stuff. Also notable, if you know the Field Notes brand, it is much bigger than your regular Field Notes notebook. Right. So that's very curious.
Links and pictures in the description for everyone. Following along, go ahead, show us the next one.
And I also got these red Field Notes. I don't know, maybe it's like Harlequin inside, whatever. You get these things. And it is fun to get them, but it does make me feel kind of stupid every time. Plus, since I'm in Amsterdam, I have to pay duties or tariffs, which is only like €4. But it is kind of delightful globalism that I get sent these ridiculous little notebooks that I don't need from Chicago, and then like a week later I get something that I owe €4 in tariffs for this stuff. What are you gonna do? Something you don't own a tariff or owe a tariff for is listening to this episode. You got maximum enjoyment. You're not going to get a bill from FedEx, PostNL, or UPS about some duty that you need for the duty that you had. It's going to be great. It was totally free. And, in payment, what's always nice is to recommend the episode to other people, or at least just say, hey, I enjoyed the episode. Good job. That's always, it'd be cooler if you got us more subscriptions. But if you just want to tell us good job, that's cool as well. Or if you just want to enjoy it, awesome. Good to hear. If you want to get the show notes about things that we talked about and lots of links to things we didn't talk about, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/516. There's also a link there to join our Slack community, which is doing just fine. Very active, lots of conversations, fun stuff. But go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/516. Check it all out. And we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
All right, Kote, very good episode as always. A little after show here. So we've already, we're taking in some feedback on your JSON comments. So we'll do a little rapid fire here to see if any of these things sway you in your thoughts. So I think it's Jesse, or it could be Jesus, but I think it's Jesse in the Slack. But he writes in on and says that YAML isn't officially a superset of JSON. It's easy to translate one to the other. And the JSON versus YAML debate should be moot. What other options are you? So are you swayed at all that you could just use YAML instead of JSON? So a couple things just to give you a little background, a quick refresher. YAML does support comments. So just the little pound sign, you can use it. It's got the multi-line string, so you don't have to do any of that. And the data types, more relaxed, no quotes for strings, right? And of course, there's just like, when you look at it, they're just less braces. There's no braces. So like, are you at all moved that like, maybe you could just use YAML? Is this swaying your opinion at all?
I dabbled in YAML a little bit in my relearning things, and I haven't written it off yet. I've heard all the things. It seemed okay. The whole idea of using like invisible characters to demark important things wigs me out a little bit. But then the other thought that I had is that like, yeah, but like you just use an IDE and it takes care of everything for you. Kind of famous last words. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It could be fine. I think I don't know. Maybe.
All right. So you're not swayed. All right. Well, I look forward. I think we're going to get plenty of feedback on this. But maybe the answer is just like ChatGPT. In the end, it's like, I'm not really doing any of this. I just throw it to ChatGPT and let it figure out all the quotations. I don't care about these quotation marks.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is just going to prove the point of everyone who thinks I'm insane, but I never had a problem with XML. I think, I like dreamed in HTML.
We have to leave that in the after show. That's fine. Man, guys, you're firing them off. This is like Hot Take Tuesday or something. Hot Take Wednesday.
I mean, listen, once they introduced namespaces, it got out of control, right? Because then you were doing all sorts of stuff, but like just a simple like if all I want to do is have like a D100 table of like, fluids you might find in a magic shop, and I want to have a little bit of like markup that tells you what it is, who authored it, and maybe a comment talking about what I ate for lunch that day. Can't go wrong with XML. It's going to
All
be
right.
fine,
I
right?
like
Like,
it. I like it. All right. Well, the other thing we should say, I just want to let you know that Michael also used in the Slack. He also once subscribed to the Field Notes subscription, but canceled it for feeling stupid, is what he said. Kind of like you said as well. So I do feel like, if nothing else, like you, Michael, and John Dickerson should get in a Slack channel together and just always be ready to talk about Field Notes. It's like there is definitely something about Field Notes and people that have like a writer kind of like mind. There's a small but very vocal group of you, and I want all of you to find each other, because I
I mean,
know I can detect the passion. And of course, like what I always say when the subject comes up is like, you know what I do? I just don't take notes. And it works fine. But go ahead.
I think maybe at some point there's probably a lot of field note aficionados who are like, I don't know what job I want to do, but it needs to involve writing stuff in field notes notebooks.
It is. Maybe it's just a slight it's a tiny bit divergent from like when you're in like the Home Depot and you're just like, man, I just need to buy these tools. Like you're not going to use these tools, but you're like looking at the Craftsman or
Oh
the
yeah.
high end kind of stuff. You're like, I need a new socket set, and you're just like, there is sort of a need. So maybe it is. Maybe it's just a closely aligned to that.
Yeah,
So
you're like,
I
have
love it.
have you have you ever really thought about what's in between your walls?
Hmm.
With this camera, you could know.
You can
I
know. I
might
love
need
it.
that.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, listen. Finally, as we wrap up here, I also wanted to mention. I think it's Henning, and I think he's. I don't know what's the O with the two dots above it. Is that a German character, or is that a one of our character? I was gonna say. I feel like that maybe means he's from Germany, but probably not. But he comes in and he also there's actually several people in here that, if you will, endorse your take on XML. So. But there's also some people in here that say that's like living like savages. So I don't know. Again, I think we're getting a lot of feedback on this. So look forward to more hot takes from you, Cote, next week. Now, you won't be here next week. Probably not. So probably Matt and I recording a little later in the afternoon. But fear not, Cote will return, not too long after his many travels. And so
That's
thanks
right.
to Michael, Henning, Jesse, and everybody else for watching. And with that, we will talk to you next time.
Yeah. We'll see everyone later. Take it XSLTZ.